Hello, my name's Danielle and this is my Living with Chiari blog. In my last blog I spoke about my symptoms and I basically explained why I was doing this blog. And I said that in my next blog that I was going to tell you my story. I'm just going to try and get this as short and sweet because it's going to be a bit of a long story. Okay, so in the beginning, I had no idea I had this, and all of a sudden I collapsed. I couldn't move my legs. It was almost like, my body just sort of gave up and I became paralysed. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. My first thought was, it was the summertime. I had mosquito bites and I thought, well, it could have been, something to a reaction or something. I don't know. It was about 2 a.m. I remember this clear as day. And I rang up my friend. And I said, look, I can't move my legs, what do I do? And he said, right, I'll come and collect you, we'll take you to A&E. So we did, and I went for all the blood tests. I was there for a few days. The longest time I'd ever been in hospital was overnight. So he took me to hospital, and to be honest, I was getting so fed up because there was no answers, that I got ready and I was so convinced that everything was going to be fine. So they did this MRI scan, and I was like, what's an MRI scan? So they did this in my brain and my spine. And he came round and he was a nice doctor, He sat on my bed and he said, right, you haven't got this, you haven't got all these hemorrhages. Went through the list of, no sort of common things. And he said, but you do have this Arnold Chiari malformation. I thought, Arnold what? And you have these 2 sort of syrinxes, which are like fluid cysts on your spinal cord. I thought, okay. And I rang my mum. And I said, look, I've got something wrong with my brain. And she went, yeah, right. I'm the sort of joking person. And I was like, no, seriously. And I told her, and she said, right, I'll be there in a minute. She was literally here in a minute. And she, and the doctor explained everything, and, it all went from there, really. And I went to the Oxford John Radcliffe Hospital. And my consultant at the time was Dr. Kadu Hudson. And, I got there. And he was like, right, we'll do the surgery. I thought, okay, I'm the sort of person who doesn't really get fazed by much things. I was there, about to put me to sleep, and that's when it hit me. I thought, oh, too late to back out now. So I had the surgery, woke up. Obviously I was in a lot of pain. I had a lot of head pain. Previously, before the operation, they asked me if I had any headaches. It all came together that I did. I actually did have headaches. I just never noticed them. Which is mostly the common, it's quite common for people who have this not actually to realise they have these sort of headaches, the excruciating pain at the back of the head, because they've had it for so long. So, that's quite common. So I had the operation, everything, fine, went out, and I came home. 2 days later, I just started getting these headaches. I thought, what's going on? And I had high temperature. Went to hospital and I had meningitis. Put me on these, the normal meningitis sort of drugs through the drip, and I was fine, felt like rain. Went home, a couple of days later, had exactly the same, but just 10 times worse, and I was vomiting. I had really high temperatures of 40, it was ridiculous. Went back, so I had meningitis again, and it looked at me like, this is impossible. Did loads of tests, and obviously I did, and my spinal fluid was obviously I think my infection markers were really high at the time. And, I went there, and I was in hospital for a month, and within the month I had, they gave me loads of drugs, but still the infection markers weren't going down. At the time, all the doctors at John Radcliffe had no idea what was going on. They couldn't work it out, but why this, my meningitis wasn't fading. Until I remember the microbiologist, he said, well, they put a patch inside your head, which if you are somebody living with Chiari, then you'd understand what this means. And this basically to stop the brain from herniating any further. So, and obviously they thought, right, well, this patch could have been disintegrating in your brain. And they thought, okay, so they redid the first operation, which was the foramen magnum decompression. And there it was. It had fallen into pieces. And I was like, okay. And then as soon as I did the operation, I was absolutely right as rain. I felt great, but then that was fine. But then I got hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain, and they tried for about 2 weeks with lumbar punctures, which is like a needle in the spine, to try and drain the fluid. obviously they couldn't get it down, so they put a shunt in. Went home, everything was fine, About a month, I think I was out of hospital for about 2 months. 2 months I think this was, and I started getting these pains in my leg, sort of the back of the leg. And I just put it down to, because obviously I'd been in hospital, I was going to get these muscle pains. Left it, had a scan, and it came out with that I had, my syrinx had grown, which is at my bottom syrinx, which was on T11. It had grown, this fluid. Went to hospital. Well, of course, they did put a shunt in. And, and they was like, okay, you put the shunt, and they had to operate. And they put a shunt in. Okay, it was there. 2 days later, the shunt stopped working. I had to go back into hospital. So I was in there this time. This was probably my worst sort of, that went on for ages. And then I went in, then all of a sudden, I had this humongous pain again in my legs. It was non-stop, this pain. And, I was in hospital at the time, and they thought I'd do a scan. It's not going to be growing because it's only been a couple of days. Well, of course, it had grown again. This top syrinx, which was sort of on C1, it sort of covered the whole spine, but it was the main bit was C1. It had grown, so they put another shunt into the top of my spine. To drain this shunt drains fluid from the syrinx into your stomach, or and I had to have that replaced, which is called a syringopleural shunt, which they put into your chest, so it goes from the syrinx into your chest. Now, everything that was fine, and I was okay for about a day, and I started, I went home. I had a friend at the time who lived in Oxford, and we stayed with her, and I had, it was awful because I had loads of pain. I was sick, and they put me on steroids, and I ballooned up. I was absolutely skinny before, and they just completely ballooned up. And I was in their hospital, and these syrinxes just kept growing, and they couldn't understand. They kept doing operations, and my blood pressure was just through the roof. It was very low. And what was it? Where was I at? Yeah, so I was in hospital, and sorry, the thing is with the chiari is you always forget your words, and you could be halfway through a sentence and then you totally forget where you're at. So excuse me if I go blank on this video. So yeah, anyways, I was in hospital, and my spine, obviously I'd swollen up so bad that I couldn't breathe, and I thought, what is going on, so they ended up taking me down as an emergency. And all of a sudden, there was this, apparently all my organs had swollen up. You couldn't see any organs. And they had to decompress the spinal cord. And it took them probably about 6-7 hours. And I was really, my heart stopped in theatre. And it was terrifying for my mum, bless her heart. She ended up, and I was in theatre, and my surgeon apparently turned around to my mum, and said, I don't think she's going to make it, and obviously, for a mother to hear that, it's terrible, honestly. I couldn't imagine what she'd gone through. Mum's a very strong woman. Mum, if you're reading this, you're very strong. And I pulled through, and I got so confused. And I was in intensive care after, and I woke up and I was so confused. And I looked like Hey Arnold. It was ridiculous. Or a hamster. It was bad. And the surgeon said, could you wiggle your toes for me? Which I did. He was so happy. He literally smiled and gave me a hug. It was mad. I was in there, and I was getting better. But then my shunt stopped working in my brain, and they just didn't know what was going on. They still don't know. And my body just didn't accept these shunts. Anyways, came out of intensive care, and I learned to walk. It was brilliant. So anyways, this happened. I got through it, and a couple of months later, my shunt stopped working in my brain again. And this kept happening in my spinal cord. It was either my syrinx that was growing, or it was in my brain. The fluid building up. It was it was terrible. I was in so much pain. I just hated it. And, and this kept happening. And then all of a sudden, one of the last operations, everything was fine. And I was out of hospital for a good year. It was fine. The pain wasn't actually that bad. It was decreasing more. And what happened? Me and my partner, we moved to Liverpool, where I found the Walton Centre, which was fantastic, and I was fine. And then all of a sudden I started getting this pain, and I thought, and then I became paralysed in my arms. Well, of course, to this point, I was just getting this ridiculous. Why does this keep happening? My surgeon had found out that he thinks he'd done so many operations, the last surgeon, so much had happened that it had caused a blockage in my spinal cord flow. So where in my neck, there's huge, it's like a huge, almost like a build-up of what do I call it? Basically, there's a blockage in my neck. And it kept, he said, right, there's only 2 options we have here, which is less dangerous and not going to kill you. And he said, right, we can unpick everything from your neck, and it's very, very risky. Or in the end, he found out he could use a shunt into my brain to create almost like another spinal cord flow, which, I was very scared at this point, I was like, what do I do? So he did it, and this operation was, I think it was about 6 months ago now. So, this was good 6 months ago. And before that, that was it. Another surgeon had put a shunt in, another shunt in my spine. And of course, when they put the shunt in, another sort of another fluid had popped up again. So, my surgeon wasn't very happy because he didn't want anyone really doing surgery on me because he knew that it would be very risky. Well, of course, then I got an infection. They had to operate again, and that's when he did this operation to put this shunt for the flow. I did that, but then of course I got a bleed on the brain. Well, it just carried on, and then it was only a small bleed, so it didn't take me that long to recover, which was great. I came home, and here I am today. Hi, and that's pretty much my story. The problem is with this story is, the first sort of 2 years I was fine, didn't suffer with depression, didn't nothing. But then it hit me, all of a sudden just hit me, and I became very depressed for a year. I sort of, pushed all my friends out, didn't want to speak to anybody. Didn't help that I lived hundreds of miles away from them, didn't help one bit. So it was very difficult for me. I couldn't accept it. I felt like, I couldn't be myself. I didn't feel like myself, and I'm still struggling with it now. But, I'm a lot better than I used to be, which is great. This video is becoming the longest video I've ever done, so I'm going to stop there. In my next vlog, we'll talk about, obviously, how you can deal with these problems, and how you can become more like yourself again, because I feel like with living with chiari, you can feel like you're not the same person as you used to be. So it's important that we all try to, especially for girls, we want to feel as we used to be. We want to look good, and you feel like you don't look yourself anymore, even though to other people you do. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do in my next video. This is my blog, and I hope you have a good day. And that's it. Okay, brilliant. Thank you.